when I came to South Africa, I was so much into basically, even though it was not really a new innovation, but I wanted to be an internet service provider.
Okay.
Because internet is so expensive in South Africa, and people need internet for information.
Yeah.
The country cannot go forward without people getting
Yeah.
information. Because I was in accounting at that time, I was
Okay.
working as an accountant, still trying to kind of like build it up.
At what point did you study accounting? Because
Okay, all right.
I think your journey, especially academically, sounds very elaborate, and I want to ask,
Yeah.
what degree have you not done?
Yeah. And during New Year's, the New Year's Eve, something fun, they'll have like fireworks. We go to a place and like have like big
we
fireworks,
have
and we're
those
all
too in South
watching,
Africa, So I have them everywhere in South Africa.
Yeah. But they extraordinary, My stage name was called Baby.
No.
Welcome to the Black Room, where we unpack least talked about topics affecting how we navigate adulting in this day and age.
Today we are in discussion with Sandile, and the topic for today is responding to life scripts. And just a disclaimer, we are not experts or advisors. This is simply a conversation. Hello, Sandile.
Hello, Nandi.
How are you?
I'm good, and how are you?
Good, thank you. I think just to get into the conversation, I'd like to get a view of who you are and where you're from.
I'm Sandile. I'm from KZN, in a village called EP002, so I'm actually from rural areas. So I grew up over there. I went to school over there in EP002 and the villages around and schools around. And then I went to Durban in college, and
So your life between, I guess, grade creche up until grade 12 is where you were at EP002.
yeah. Sometimes I was going out of my village, to other villages, but I was still going to villages around. Villages
Yes.
are close together, so you can go to another school that still belongs in a different village, and and it's still fine.
And it's still fine. I just want to locate where it is from Mduba by any chance.
Mduba. You know Ikopo, they call
Yes,
it
yes,
Ikopo.
Ikopo, yes.
Yeah. That's kind of like my
Oh.
small town.
Oh, I see.
But I drive about like 30 minutes to 45 minutes from there.
And what was life? I think before we moved to your life in Durban,
Yeah,
what was life like at the village?
At the village, I think we grew up a little bit tough. In the villages we didn't have that much, but I spent a lot of time like herding cows. So it was like herding cows, schools and sports.
Does this happen before school, the herding of cows?
After school.
After school.
After
okay.
school, there was a guy who was responsible for that when I'm at school, and then after I finished school,
Then
I'll
you
go
take
and like
over.
head the cows and play soccer at the same time I'm heading the
my
cows.
goodness.
Sometimes they get lost, you know.
But you said it's tough, and to me that's sounding exciting.
Yeah.
And maybe just a view of your family structure out of curiosity. Did you have other brothers helping you herd the cows? Who else is at home?
Unfortunately, I was the only brother.
Oh, goodness.
I was the only brother with two girls, so there were three of us at home, and I was the only brother, so I was the only one who was actually herding the cows. So it was difficult because I would like to like play sports sometimes, but I didn't have time to do that because I had to like herd the cows,
So were you able to just aspire to something else besides the cows, since your life on the daily school cows soccer?
I actually wanted to be like a professional soccer player.
What?
Yeah. But
How far did that go?
I didn't get to, explore it very well because I didn't have a chance to like play.
Okay, but were you the best kid in the group there?
It depended on days. Sometimes my performance, I'll feel like today I'm in form,
Okay.
And
any like school tournaments?
Yes. At school too, I was doing running, like running 100 meters and 200 meters, and I was doing singing as well. You know, I was in the choir, so we're going around.
Goodness,
with the
this is a
choir.
full life you lived. And then moving into Durban,
Yeah.
you went there to college to study what?
Yeah, I went there to pursue chemical engineering.
From soccer
Yeah,
player?
yeah,
When?
Yeah,
I think that's
you know,
where you
my
could have
parents,
explored
my
soccer.
parents were very strict that we should, you know, like be educated. So even when I was at home, I'll make sure that when I get back home at night, I do my homework. So they will push me to like do my homework all the time. So that's how kind of like school started. It was ingrained at home by my parents,
I
you know,
see.
yeah.
So
yeah.
going into chem engineering,
Yeah.
were you hoping that when it's done, you'd then go back to sports? Because it sounds like you were quite active.
Yeah, okay, let me see. When I went, I think I was just hoping to work from there. You know, my focus was just like I wanna get my education and then get to work and then kind of like enjoy life, you know, buy a car or a house or, you know, something like that.
And
yeah,
did it transpire that way? What happened after?
Yeah. I went to school. You know, after that, I got a job immediately with one of the chemical plants because it was chemical engineering. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Okay,
worked
awesome.
there
In Durban
as
still?
yeah, in Durban still.
For
in
how
Umbong
long?
In Trini. I was there for about, okay, I did like my in-service training for 1 year and then I
Okay.
got like a permanent job for like 2 years. And then I moved to Nelspruit to Total,
Okay.
you know, Total South Africa. Yeah.
These are quite
yeah.
prominent companies you worked on in South Africa, and I'm getting the
Yeah.
idea that your life got stable. But I do
Yeah.
also know that you moved into the States at some point.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
why?
yeah.
What I guess inspired that decision?
Yeah, you know, during that time, most of us, I'll say like most of like youngsters, we always like American culture, you know, we love the music.
Were you the
know.
hip hop person?
Yeah, I was not. It was kind of like R&B most
Oh,
of
I
the time.
see,
That
I
time the
see.
hip hop was
Which
not
artist?
that much.
Which
yeah.
song? Which artist?
Do I remember Drew Hills,
Ah.
H-Town, you know, all
That's
those
real
guys,
R&B.
yeah. Even girls as well, like Brandy, you know, Monica, you know, all those guys. So, you know, we love America because of their art, you know, of their
Okay.
culture. So I aspire to kind of like go there.
You're very well
Yeah.
versed because you
Yeah.
speak of your love for sports and then also your academic talent.
Yeah.
And then your love for other types of, I guess, talents like music, etc., and different cultures.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that then moving to America, you didn't go to explore chem, or was that the case?
You mean chemical engineering?
Chemical engineering, yeah.
Yeah, I actually explored chemical engineering. I enrolled in like masters there.
So you
Yeah.
moved as a student.
I moved as a
To-
student.
okay.
Yeah, I became a student when I went to the US, you know. But engineering quite like didn't work out because it was, you know, a little bit so different, and I realized that I don't want to pursue, you know,
That far
engineering. Yeah, it was unfortunate, but
Is that something you thought of maybe at the start of engineering and thought you should just continue, or from?
it was different things, you know. When I got there, I moved from like the technicon from South Africa, or like the technical university, to the US, straight to master's degree in chemical engineering. So it kind of like didn't become kind of like compatible because
Okay.
like the syllabus and everything that we're kind of like learning here in South Africa quite didn't, I don't want to say that, but it didn't give me the background, you know, that I needed.
Or was
to
it like
do the
more
masters.
advanced that
It was
side?
more advanced, and it was a little bit different than the things that we, you know, learned here in South Africa.
So did
you
that
know.
like sort of set you back from the other students?
Yeah, it became like a little bit harder.
I
You know,
see.
it became like a little bit harder, and it shouldn't be that hard. You know, it became clear that okay, if I have to do this master's pro, I have to like, because it's so technical. Chemical engineering is so technical. So whatever you do in undergraduate, you have to continue like building on it. That's why it's very important that the children, like from primary school up to like secondary, high school, you know, they learn very well so that they can have like a good foundation. Because that's the important part. That's where you learn arithmetic, you know, all those things. You kind of like build you up, build your mind, build your knowledge, you know, build your skill set.
But it's all a sequence.
Yeah, like it's all into
skip steps.
It's all in kind of like in pieces, the tools that you're gonna be using once you get there at university to, you know, study for the career. So you have to learn those things while you know you learn all these syllabuses, all these different subjects at like high school, primary school. Yeah. Then you're gonna put it together once you get to the university and study for your career. So it's very important to have like good fundamentals.
So did that gap sort of affect your decision moving forward?
It did affect me, you know, with continuing with engineering, because I realized that okay, I'm not gonna be that great at this thing that I'm doing, and I wanna be great in what I'm doing. So I changed, you know, I pursued the business, you know, the business degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which one specifically? Is it like
it was a business administration. Yeah, business administration.
So starting back at undergrad.
Yeah, starting back from undergrad.
And what,
you know, basically,
what was that experience?
It was purely cool. That experience was.
Do you want us? Was it easy?
It was easy. Yeah, it became so easy. You know, all of a sudden I got like all distinctions and all that. Yeah.
Then you're like, what now? What thing? What
But then on the side, I was doing music at that time.
What?
You know, so I was like making music in my Mac.
Is
computer.
It because now you're feeling there's a lot more time because you
because I still had these dreams. You remember I told you in South Africa when I left. You know, we used to love, you know, the American artists and all that. So, you know, I still have those dreams.
I'm going to get there and I'm going to make this music. And
exactly. I want to get there one day. Yeah,
I want to
made
be a musician.
Song. Yeah.
But was it actually just music as a hobby, or to become a musician and be in the limelight?
Me, I really wanted to be in the limelight.
Really?
You know, yeah, I wanted to be in the limelight. But, and doing school on the side.
And the music, were you doing instrumentals or did you sing, rap?
I was singing, I was writing, I was putting the beats together, you know, in the computer. So I was doing basically everything, you know, for myself, yeah.
And and then how far did that journey go?
Okay, that's when I decided to go to LA. You know, I transferred from school in the middle, because in the US you can be able to transfer from one university to the other and continue from where you left off, as long as you haven't gone beyond the 2 years from the original college or university. Mm-hmm. So I decided to transfer to LA because that's where kind of like the limelight is at.
You are chasing this limelight. You're like, where is the limelight? Where is the limelight?
Exactly.
And did you find it in LA? Wait, before you get there, I want to know if you have an LA specific name. Because I hear it.
No, I don't. You know, they still call me Sandile.
Man.
They're the next and like Sandile. Yeah, that's how they call. I guess they find it easy.
Did you not even try to create one just to align to the LA culture?
Okay. My stage name was called Baby.
No. Who gave you this name?
Okay, because I was still exploring. This guy said, "What about it? Yaya Josie," you know, because I'm from Joburg, you know, he was like, okay, Yaya Josie, you know.
And did you
what
take
about
that and try, or you were like, no, I'm Baby?
Yeah, just Baby, just couldn't, you know, I don't know, you know.
So you went in as Baby.
But it wasn't that much, you know, like popular at that name.
Look,
when I like promote the songs and all that, I'll kind of like write that, you know. I
do want to put it on the name Baby. Look, but it's fine. We're not there now. But I think we could have explored a bit. Other names, certainly. And then where does Baby go? Does Baby score a CD cover, or is Baby singing at
I actually made a song. I made a song, and when I was at school in Florida, You know, I'll sing for like
I want
students.
Baby to actually
you know,
sing the song for us.
no, I can't sing it now. It's been quite a long time. You know, I've been kind of
What's
like
it
out of singing.
about? Do you know the title?
It was
maybe?
about like going around the world, you know, with my girl.
Yes!
You know, yeah, going to Jamaica.
I think you should.
You know,
do you have a
going back to
recording somewhere?
Joburg and
I would actually like to attach it to those if you have a recording.
I
Please
still
do
have the
send
song.
that.
Yeah,
I do want to
definitely.
hear it.
Yeah.
And then that ends. How does that sort of end?
All right. Unfortunately, when I was in Florida, me and my ex-wife, we kind of like ended things, you know. So when I was going in LA, I was kind of like going alone, and you know, I was not in quite a good state of mind then, because I still went, you know, I just went through such a difficult time.
Okay.
Yeah, so the motivation from music, you know, things really change, and I needed kind of like support. You know, you need the support around in order to sometimes fulfill your dreams, you know. So okay, this is what happened. I transferred to school in LA. All right, I went to school. I was still doing music a little bit, but you know, things were kind of like dying down because
Okay.
I had like, my mental state was not quite right then, you know. And unfortunately, my equipment was stolen, you know.
So this is all your sound equipment.
This
you're
is all
using
my
to
sound
record.
equipment, my computer that had my beats, you know. I had my songs that I already
Sure.
written, you know, already
No backups
composed.
and stuff anyway. Or but I
Yeah,
mean, in terms, you can only get that in terms of
I
music.
did.
But-
I did have backups, but even the programs that were in the computer, because I was at school at that time, like the
I see.
affordability just became an issue that I could not afford anymore to kind of like have those programs.
So you dropped music specifically to, and I understand you went through a lot and you needed that type of break. So dropping
Yeah.
music wasn't really because of
Yeah.
your loss of love for it. It was just
Yeah.
based on circumstances.
Yeah, a combination of things. Yeah, the mental health issue was no longer that good after the divorce, and I'm in a new area in LA, and the school was hard as hell. You know, I had to kind of like focus on that. But some friends were still encouraging me. You know, when they hear my songs, that Sandile, you should pursue this. I think people will follow you. People will like this. You know.
It's so
But, you
interesting
know,
because music
yeah.
is art, right? And usually when
Yeah.
you're going through a specific situation in life, you want to resort to
Yeah.
something where you can express yourself. So it's interesting
Yeah.
that that's something you couldn't resort.
Yeah,
to.
yeah. You know, like, because I went to depression, and depression is a different, very kind of like hard mental state. You know, mental health issue.
Are
It
you
kind of
are you
like,
able to
yeah.
try to paint a picture of what goes through your mind when you're in feeling or in depression?
Okay, one of the things that depression does is that you feel kind of like uninterested to things. You
I
know,
see.
yeah,
I see.
yeah. You become kind of like demotivated to do stuff. You know.
And is
like,
the demotivation coming from just feeling tired, or you're feeling like incapable?
It's not that you're feeling incapable, but because it's usually linked to something that kind of went wrong in your life. You become absorbed with what went wrong in your life and become disappointed, you know, and all those things. So it kind of like consume you, that dark cloud kind of consumes you, you know, and you focus. That's why other people even want to commit suicide, because
Sure.
they cannot get
You
out
can't
of
get
that
out
dark
of it.
cloud. They think about those negativities and all that kind of stuff. So you kind of like, so it's a very
What-
dangerous thing, yeah.
What other areas of your life would you say were affected by depression? Maybe besides your drive and motivation.
Yeah, I'll say when you go to the US, you kind of need support too. You have to know where you're gonna get support. You know, you need a support structure. It's a new country, very competitive country. So you need a support structure, not in terms of finance as such, but people are helping
Like-
you, motivating you.
And
Uh,
is this
yeah.
is this maybe a part of you that you feel lacked at the
Yeah,
time?
I felt
alone?
it really lacked because I just lost kind of
The
like
one
a
person
family.
who
When
I
I
get
was
you.
there, yeah, her and together with her family because they were kind of like my support structure. And now here I am, I'm alone, in this country. All of a sudden, their kind of support went away. So it kind of like distracted me, mentally. What's the next step now? What to do? I kind of like had to concentrate on like survival,
Yeah.
how to navigate alone. Nobody
And-
helps me with that anymore.
I see.
So there were things that were kind of like priority. My health was a priority then. There were things that were kind of like more priority than now doing things that were fun like music. So
Oh,
that's
I
why
get
had
you.
to,
I get you. So it's a mind frame you
yeah,
were in.
yeah,
And what's
yeah,
that? What does
yeah.
that next step? Because you mentioned just
Yeah.
trying to focus on the next step. What did it
Yeah.
then look like for you to just maybe try get yourself out of it, even though like you mentioned, it's a lonely journey.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you did to just be in a
Alright.
space of focus again?
Yeah, okay. I was seeing a counseling a lot over there, and I made some friends too, people that I could go out with, start life again with. Was very helpful and focus on my school, focus on like being successful, try to like push so that I could be successful. Then I finished my school, I managed to finish my degree.
Well done.
Yeah,
Well done on
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
you mentioned focusing on being successful, and I
Yeah.
would like you to maybe define it further for us, what success meant for you. And I know it's
Yeah.
very different for everyone.
All right. Yeah, success for me meant I finished my degree, and then I go out and work, and then I had a lot of like business ideas, and I still do even now that I want to pursue, so that I can make an impact that is bigger than myself, in this world. So that was one of the intentions. If you look at people like Mark Zuckerberg, people like Bill Gates, they're doing things that
Yeah.
are big,
That's huge,
that
yeah.
are helping, the world. So
Yeah.
that was my intention afterwards to, work, but at the same time, come up with the innovation
I see.
where I can help the world become better.
I wanna
Yeah.
stop there, and because
Yeah.
I'm just listening to your story, you sound like a real brilliant mind, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
assuming that you would have attempted some innovations.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to
Yeah.
know if you have
Yeah.
tried to explore
Yeah.
that.
Yes, I tried. When I came to South Africa, I was so much into basically, even though it was not really a new innovation, but I wanted to be an internet service provider
Okay.
because internet is so expensive in South Africa, and people need internet for information.
Yeah.
The country cannot go forward without people getting
Yeah.
information. So
Yeah.
internet needs to be cheap, or inexpensive, and it needs to be structured so that not only people who have contracts with the service providers
Yeah.
get the better
Because
deals.
it then speaks to
Yeah,
affordability as
yeah.
well, and then there's the
Yeah.
issue of
Yeah.
digital
Yeah.
exclusion, I guess,
Yeah,
from which
yeah.
is the majority of South
Exactly.
Africans.
The people that are poor are not getting the better deals,
Yeah.
because they can't afford contracts or they don't have like pay stubs in order to get contracts. So it excludes a lot of people in the economy that could be getting information
Yeah.
and try to take the country forward. So that one of the impact that I wanted to do. But when I came to South Africa, it was really, just difficult to get information
Just okay.
on how to do stuff,
Okay.
the bureaucracy, I don't want to be negative, but we're still growing, we're still
Yeah.
trying to sort things out, to simplify our systems and processes out, you
Yeah.
know, and that was very difficult just to, get engineers who can do that,
Yeah.
go go and talk to telecom. How would I be able to get internet from the supply?
Yeah.
And then
To be the
supply.
ISP.
Yeah. It was
Supply
so
to different
daunting.
homes.
Yeah. So, I
So-
basically, got a little bit demotivated. I won't say that I stopped it, because I still have that dream to kind of like supply better internet in South Africa.
It's a good cause. I also share the same passion in that regard, because
Yeah.
I myself am from the rural communities. I've just
Yeah.
been fortunate enough to have been exposed to the world outside there, and it's brilliant. It's beautiful. There's everything you want just to survive and eat, but you explore the world and you need more than just food. You need more than just shelter. So it's a very important cause, and I understand and I can tell that it's a bit of a frustrating position to really want to help the community and help people besides just yourself and feel blocked. And where does that type of feeling then take you? Where to from all the doors that were closed on you?
Yeah. Then I'll say I kind of like changed my path and started thinking about what would I do that would be in my capabilities, in my power, without somebody else like trying to help me. Because I realized that if you're gonna need help, from somebody else, it's gonna be
more difficult.
Yeah, it's gonna be really more difficult. So you kind of like have to come up with something where you can like manage for yourself and try and like grow on your own.
But then I guess to an extent you feel limited because you have all these dreams and want to reach a wider communities, but the world is like, no, like stay here, this is your path.
So what I thought about was to come up with like systems, like apps, where I try to organize for some businesses. There's a lot of kind of like informal economy where people are just doing things on their own, and they have no platform to get customers or to like advertise or something like that. So I thought about that maybe if I build a platform like that, because it's kind of like within my power, for those businesses, so that they can get their businesses organized and like make them professional, and also helping customers at the same time to find those businesses easily, so it helps both the customer and it helps the businesses themselves to find the customers.
There's mutual benefit in that. I think
Yeah.
before we got to where we are, we actually skipped a big step, because I know now our conversation is in South Africa. We're back in South Africa, but I didn't get, I guess, the picture of you packing your bags and deciding
we're moving too fast.
I want to get when you decided and what went through your mind when you decided, that's it, I'm packing, I'm coming back home.
All right. Since I was alone in South Africa for like quite a while,
in LA.
In LA, and things were really moving a little bit slow. My career, because I was in accounting at that time. I was working as an accountant, still trying to kind of like build it up.
At what point did you study accounting? Because
Okay, all right. All right, what happens in America, some people may know, the education is very flexible. So you kind of like get to touch many areas, many fields. I mean, I did poetry, I was doing business. I did finance, I did accounting.
Is this as modules? Are you doing them as modules?
Yeah, it's classes. Like it's a class.
Feeding to your business administration.
Or no, it's part of like business administration.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, marketing. You do all these things.
Okay, cool. The structure is the same as
So it's kind of like flexible, though. You can take classes from different, I'll say, different fields.
So from business administration, you decided to pursue accounting.
Yeah, because that's where the opportunities were.
I see.
The accounting had more opportunities, career-wise.
And
there
at
were
this
more
point,
jobs.
would you say because you're not mentioning the passion anymore in terms of those opportunities you're talking to.
Yeah, it was.
Were you now at a point where you just want to be where the money is at?
I was at that time. I just needed a job because I just got out of school.
Okay.
You know, I needed a job so that I can stay afloat.
Okay.
So, it was, accounting,
Okay.
that kind of like
And what
led
is it
me.
about accounting? We'll blame accounting
Yeah,
for chasing you
yeah.
out of LA.
Yeah,
What is it about accounting that made you pack your bags and come home?
All right. Then I decided that life is moving a little bit too slow, and I really needed a motivation at that time.
Okay.
Like I was really not in the right place. I needed support. I needed a family that's gonna be closer.
I see.
So I kind of like needed to recharge.
I see.
And there was nothing better than going back to my own country. And I realized that okay, for me to be really successful in America, I need a plan.
Sure.
And for me to draw a plan, I
You
need
need
to
to be-
go back to my country where I have support around,
Yeah.
and I can think clearly. Like I was telling you right before that what innovations I was seeing about
Yeah.
when I just got here, but it was one of those things that I wanted to kind of like build my plan on, for me to be able to go back to America, because I didn't want
Also,
to
you're
be
not here to stay.
if it happens that I stay, but I'm kind of like a flexible individual wherever it works.
Okay.
I'm flexible. I'm willing to go. So I'm still working on that plan, because I didn't want to be kind of like, nobody. I didn't want to be kind of like everybody else. I still
Okay.
want to be successful. I still want
Something
to
be
get level.
part of
Yeah.
something impactful.
And it's a
okay.
process, and that
Yes.
part of the process was me coming back, drawing up a plan, afresh,
Yeah.
and then maybe go back to America, whichever works,
I also want to maybe get a feel of, just given your journey in America, it doesn't sound like an easy one, though there were a lot of exciting parts to it.
Yeah.
What exactly is the driver for you to go back? So once you've been here and had the structure,
It's
why
a very,
solidify
it's a
it?
very great country.
Okay.
Starting from education, like I'm saying, in America, you can be able to do an undergraduate, maybe in maths, for example, and then do a master's in accounting.
I hear you.
know.
I hear you.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're not,
So
there's no limitations.
so there's no limitations. They have so much flexibility. So it's a great country, and there's so much room for like innovation when you are an entrepreneur, somebody who think like innovating all the time. That's a great country because it supports that.
Okay.
It's a capital country, so it kind of like support that individual effort. When people are putting effort individual privately
Okay.
to make themselves successful. So
Yeah.
I like a country like that.
Okay.
Because I like innovation. I'm kind of like have an entrepreneurial spirit. So it's a great country. It's competitive.
Yeah,
I
it
agree to that, yeah.
sounds very competitive, and that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking that. Once you've had your plan, to me it sounds like it would be sooner to, I
Yeah.
guess, clarify it here at home.
Yeah.
I think your journey, especially academically, sounds very elaborate, and I want to ask
Yeah.
what degree have you not done?
Yeah. Okay, right now, I then in South Africa, I pursued my MBA, through America, of course.
Okay.
But now I want to do my PhD in like
Goodness.
Yeah.
When is the
Yeah.
end to it? And I'm not saying we should
There's
end, but
there's actually no
Yeah,
end. There's
okay.
actually no
That's a
end.
very-
Like I
that's a
said,
very
you
interesting-
can never relax. You should be that kind of person who always pursue success.
Okay.
You know
and,
what I'm saying?
and I think saying that, and just given what you mentioned about coming home to regroup, whatnot, where
Yeah.
else do you draw your strength? Because just maybe having touched on the part where you felt like
Yeah.
you were done and you
Yeah.
needed to pause, but
Yeah.
that versus the amount of drive you have now and the energy to just proceed, where are you drawing
Yeah.
that strength from? And what
Yeah.
is it that's keeping you going?
That's keeping me going. Yeah, I'll say from the family, having family around helps a great deal. The social aspect of life, having friends, people that you can relate to, having intimate relationship, That's very helpful.
Yes, yes to that.
Yeah. That's very helpful. And also in South Africa, there's still a lot to be done. So there's still so much opportunity out there.
Okay.
So it's easy to kind of like see the gap, see the problem and the desired state, and you see the gap that, okay, here's a problem, here's the desired state, because there are still so many things that need to be done. This is what I need to do. So that's where it starts the innovation, to find that gap that needs to be fulfilled. And South Africa is kind of like better to do that because there's so much that still needs to be done.
There's so much still to be done. And I think if you've looked around in your time here, you'll notice that the youth is also just as driven. And I do hope we'll get to a point where people feel like there's access to opportunities and really stretch themselves and make an impact. I want us to go back to America, and I want you to tell me about all the fun times, the parties, the everything fun. What we see in the movies.
When I got to America, actually I got to a city called Seattle.
Okay.
Very beautiful city. It's got a space needle. You know, if you look at the Seattle town right now, you see a space needle. Like a tower that goes all the way up. That
Only
has a restaurant up there. I've been there.
Oh, fun.
When I go home, I was living in an island, so I was taking a boat all the time.
How does that come about? I mean, I've only ever seen tall buildings. How does that happen? And why choose?
There's a lot of islands there, especially in
amazing.
It's called Puget Sound. In Seattle, those places around in Washington State. There's a lot of islands, and people live in those islands.
So do you get on a boat to go get bread?
Yes, to even go get bread, because you shop in the mainland. I'll say the mainland, even though it's in the mainland, because the mainland is like the U.S. part in the land beside Alaska, Hawaii, and all those places. So this bigger U.S. part, they call it mainland. So
what's happening in the island? If you happen to live in an island and hop on a boat for everything that's anything, what's happening there?
There they kind of like live, I'll say, would I say a farm lifestyle, kind of, because there's a lot of wood.
Oh, I see.
People...
What, did you deliberately choose that place?
Yeah, that's where actually my ex-wife was living then. So you'll take this boat in the morning, it comes in like different times.
How many people are in this boat?
It's a ferry. It's called a ferry, so it's like a big boat,
Do you
and
wait
you put your
for
cars. You go with your cars in that boat. So you just drive in, park your cars, all people that are going,
I've seen those.
Across, and then just go over there. And we had a lot of parties too. I'll go downtown Seattle, and have some couple of drinks, party, go to clubs, and it was fun. There's a lot of diversity. People are, beautiful people are like different cultures. Food was awesome, because there's so many different cultures that are, in there. You get like South America, Europe, Asia, and all that, like all together. Sometimes we'll go and like watch games, football games. It was my first time.
Did you play? Just to...
No, just watch the professional ones. Go in the stadium.
Oh, so you didn't get to America and still explore your active
life. my sports. I was still running.
Okay.
I was still running, like going to the gym, but I wasn't playing like really professional sports.
I see.
And during New Year's, the New Year's Eve, something fun. They'll have like fireworks. We go to a place and like have like big fireworks, and we're all watching,
So I have them everywhere in South Africa.
But they extraordinary, they're really extraordinary.
So I think we should up our game and
like I'm saying, like everybody like drives out there,
to
go the fireworks, like cars park, like stand in the cars as if you're watching a drive-through movie. you know, you sit there and you watch the fireworks and all that. It's kind of like,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
So not like
It sounds like a massive amusement park.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, yeah.
one more amusement park story
yeah.
from America.
Yeah, I went to what is it? Amusement Universal Studio. Yeah.
Okay.
When I was in LA, though. Yeah, that's the amusement park that I went to. So like Iron Man, the themes, they have different themes, you know, of all these movies, you know, at the Universal Studio. So you go on, you know, like a theme, you know, there's like games that are happening inside that are, you know, aligning to that theme.
And I think from everything that you've told me, I would like to understand your relationship with finance in that journey.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or say your finances, because finance is a bit broader.
Yeah. True. I hear what you're saying. You know, when I went to school, I used different kind of like financing over there. You know, because I could qualify in the US for, you know, government funding, you know, when it comes to school.
Okay.
So I did that. But, you know, I've been working in like different jobs. You know, for example, I've been teaching students in the US.
Is this as a
yeah.
part-time or one of your main jobs?
Yeah, as a part-time.
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
as a part-time while studying, you know, when I was doing my MBA at the
How
same
old
time.
are you
I've been-
again? 95? Oh, this is like everything you've touched on.
Yeah. So I save like a lot of money. You know,
Okay.
Yeah, I save.
Do you want to tell us how much, maybe?
Uh,
Just high level, so we know what to look for in your bank. No.
Yeah, so along the process, you know, I've been saving. I think like saving money is
Okay.
very important. You know, when you make money, you have to make sure that you save at the same time, and you always have to try to find the ways to make money. But remember, the important thing is that you should try to do something that is impactful to people, so that people can support you to make money. So it's not really about the money at the end of the day. It's about making something, you know, looking at the bigger purpose, and then you get support.
Okay.
You know, if you do something that has a reason that people will like, people
And
will buy to
believe
that
in.
idea, and then you'll make money.
Awesome.
You know, yeah. So I've been making money, you know, in different ways. Yeah, and saving it, you know. So I'm kind of like a saver, you know, and I'm still like looking at like making more money.
More money.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish you all the best in that.
Yeah.
And maybe just as a parting remarks, I would like for you to imagine you are sort of giving advice to let's say he's Sipho, he's 11 from back home, and I just want you to maybe give him some life advice encompassing everything from finances, school, relationships, and just life in general.
Yeah, I would like to tell the young lads that first of all, they should focus at school. And the opportunity to get successful really starts at a young age. So when you're playing with other friends or when you're hanging out with other friends and see a problem and see a gap and see the desired state, you know, how can you solve what kind of state would things be better, you know, if that problem was not there? There's the opportunity to like start, if you want to be a business person, to like start your innovation at that point when you're still like really young. So work on it when you're still young, when you see a gap, you know, something that you cannot do as kids and you want to play, maybe you don't have this kind of toy, that's a gap, you know. You should focus on like making that toy, you know, for your kind of like entire life. When you start at 11, by the time you're 20 with your innovation of making that toy, you'll be successful at that's where these guys who are really successful they start at a very young age. And I would say if you want to go to America, you know, to countries like America, have a plan. And it comes with that innovation, that start to innovation at a very young age to try and like solve the problem that is not solved, you know, try and solve the problem that is not solved at a very young age. Have that plan. And when you go overseas, even if it's entertainment, You know, have that plan. If you want to be a comedian or if you want to be a musician, start your music, then try and be best of what you do at that point in time when you're still young. And then when you go overseas, you already have a plan. You just implement your plan, and then people will buy to your plan. You know, when it comes to financing, you should save. You know, you shouldn't waste money. You know, you should like try and save your money and not be wasteful. You know,
It's hard not to take the saving advice per se.
Yeah,
I'm trying
yeah,
to detach
yeah,
it from myself
yeah,
because I'm not
yeah.
quite the saver.
yeah.
Thank you so
yeah,
much, Sandile,
yeah.
for your time and just sharing your life story with us.
Yeah.
This was an episode with Sandile covering how we respond to life in general. Thank you so much for joining us.